Oops, had a little technical mix up there. All right, you guys. Well, thank you for joining us. It is yet another beautiful day in Southern California. We had a great show this morning. Hopefully you guys caught that show. Also, I want to say this before we get into all the other business. I really do hope you were able to watch the video that I did on Ted Cruz earlier today. I wish all of our leadership acted as strongly as he did. He literally saved the United States of America at 3:30 in the morning. So if you guys want to watch that, I think it's a great video. Gives you a lot of information on something that you might not really be well aware of, okay? Now, as we're doing that, I want to encourage you guys to jump on with me. Go to Facebook. If you are on Facebook, I would like you to just take one moment, please, to go to your Facebook page, get on where we are live, and let people know that we are here. It's important. That's what I'm doing right now on my phone. I'm letting people know that, hey, listen, we're broadcasting live. The more people that know, the better that is going to be. So let them know that. And the subject today is the biblical significance of Afghanistan. Now, it's not going to be a long show today, but we are going to talk about some very interesting things, and hopefully it will be useful to you as we have this conversation, because I know that there are lots of questions that are being voiced about the significance of all of this. So I think it's kind of an important conversation to have. I want to take a moment to thank you guys in advance on YouTube for sharing this thing. We want you guys to share it. We want you to ask people to like it, or you like it, and ask people to watch it as you send a link for them to see it. It's really, really important, because we've got a lot of stuff to talk about, folks. And I got to tell you, things are not looking good right now in Afghanistan, and they are certainly not looking good for the President of the United States. Quite frankly, if you ask my opinion regarding the President of the United States, I feel like he has always been an embarrassment to the Union, but he has really showed how embarrassing he actually is this last few weeks, because his decision-making is flawed, it's compromised, and it is doing damage like nobody can even begin to imagine. Virtually all of Afghanistan, and I'll show you this picture right now, virtually all of Afghanistan is gone. If you look at the picture here, a good majority of all of it is taken. Kabul is taken. Everything is taken. And the President of the United States is begging the Taliban to be nice, saying, please go easy on us as we make arrangements to retreat from your country. What a horrible, absolute disgrace. I cannot imagine how much worse this thing is going to end up getting. And folks, I got to tell you, it is sad, but it is true. It's getting worse and worse and worse and worse by the moment. And we just watched a speech made by President Biden, basically telling us that he doesn't regret doing what he did. As a matter of fact, the man has doubled down on his position. He's actually saying that if he had to do it all over again, he would. I don't understand the mindset of a man who was watching the beginning of hundreds of thousands of people potentially dying, right? And he says he would do it all over again. Let's get the record straight for what's going on here, right? 9/11 takes place. All right, I'm going to very superficially, kind of scratching the surface, give you a bit of a timeline of what happened in Afghanistan, why we're there, and all the significance of it. Okay, so 9/11 happens in the United States. Obviously, it was tragic, horrible situation. We were attacked as a nation. It was perhaps the worst, if not the worst, domestic attack we have ever experienced in United States history, perhaps other than Pearl Harbor. Actually, Pearl Harbor was really bad, but it was obviously, we were talking about military bases with respect to Pearl Harbor. When we are talking about 9/11, we are talking about civilians that were directly attacked. It was an absolutely atrocious, absolutely horrible occurrence. Okay? With that, we lost a lot of liberties. Okay? We've talked about this. We've talked about the Patriot Act. We've talked about a lot of other things that have come as a result of what took place on 9/11. but perhaps one of the most tragic moments that has taken place is when we decided that for whatever reason, we would give up our liberties as a whole and as a nation in order to allow United States citizens to be put under the microscope. And the pattern that emerged from that happening, and this is a very important pattern, we've got to recognize this. The pattern that emerged from that happening is basically one that was put into place where now the very close and spying eye of United States intelligence has become more prominently focused on its own citizens than it has on people that may be an enemy to the United States. Now, things have gotten worse because the president of the United States said, we don't want anything to do with Afghanistan. Listen, I can understand why. There's a lot of things that have happened in Afghanistan that we just don't get. There's a lot of tribal issues going on that guys don't completely understand. And truth be told, you've got to understand this. It's very, very important. When you look at the things going back and forth right now with the efforts throughout the years to try to mitigate many of the problems that have erected from the civil war that's taken place in Afghanistan, they've oftentimes backfired. The former president of the United States, 45, will I say, so that we don't end up getting kicked off. The former president of the United States got pretty wise with all of this. He said, we're getting our hands in a situation we ought not to get our hands involved in. When he comes into office, there are 15,000 United States troops that are in Afghanistan. And he very methodically, as the result of a bilateral peace agreement between Afghanistan and the Taliban, makes a very concerted effort to start removing United States military personnel from Afghanistan. Now, people would say, well, don't do that. You're going to destabilize Afghanistan. That's what a lot of people said when the president at the time decided to do it. And in reality, nothing of a sort actually happened. As a matter of fact, this will blow your mind, but he was responsible for the safe, methodical, and very smart removal of 13,000 of the 15,000 plus troops that were in Afghanistan. He did that throughout the course of about a year and a half. And every step of the way, security in Afghanistan was actually at the same, if not improving. We were watching very good things begin to happen as there was a sort of a weaning process. The support of the United States was still in existence. And the Taliban knew that they could not make an effort to come against Afghan forces because if they did, they would be met with the fury of the United States of America. As we began to pull more and more troops out, 13,000. No destabilization took place. Afghanistan remained and in many cases grew in good ways. Taliban numbers kept dropping. Enter in Joe Biden. He comes into play. Joe Biden makes pretty much a unilateral decision without the support of any of his people. They all said don't do it. He makes a decision to remove the remaining 2,000 plus troops that are in Afghanistan. He goes ahead and does it. And he does it quickly without any thought or concern for the people. And we'll talk about that in a second. And the result is an Afghanistan that was once being almost completely ruled by Afghan forces under the leadership of the installed leadership. It went from there to this. It went from there to this, folks, in 2 weeks. Not even 2 weeks. It happened faster than anybody wants to possibly begin to think. This is crazy. But that's exactly what happened. Absolutely what happened. By the way, the little yellow that you see there is considered contested. That was as of as of this morning. I would be willing to bet you that it's not all that contested anymore. It's been completely taken. And this is the responsibility and the fault of the current president of the United States. How do you like this, by the way? Can I just make this note? Isn't it amazing to me that the man flew in from a so-called vacation when this was going down to go address the nation at 1:45 Pacific Standard? By the way, he was late. It makes sense. They're wanting to make sure every P and Q was correct because this was going to be a very difficult speech to give considering the political poo-poo that this has made for everybody in the Biden administration. But what's even more interesting is after he finishes the speech, which, by the way, in my opinion, may be one of the most disastrous speeches I have ever heard given by a U.S. president in my lifetime. He basically destroyed a country, completely destroyed a country, completely. He left tons of people to die that for the last 20 years supported the United States of America. And on top of that, he gets up and says, I would do it all over again if I could. And then gets back on Marine One so that he can go back to Camp David. Now you tell me, does that make any kind of sense? This is a guy who's going to bed before the sun comes down and waking up after it comes up. Since when have we ever had a United States president that was this way? We haven't. But he is, as I said, in my opinion, the worst president we have ever had in United States history. I said he would be this way. I warned people he would be this way. But some people didn't listen. And now they're seeing it, right? I kind of wonder what Rick Warren thinks about all of this and Brian Broderson and some of these other guys that encouraged voting for this guy or was happy when he was voted for. I kind of wonder what those guys in the church think about this, huh? I wonder how that worked, right? It's just really, really funny. All you clowns that put down the current or the past president of the United States, how's it working for you right now, huh? Working any better for you? It's not. So now he's back to vacationing, right? There's nothing else to say. He got out of his helicopter, walked out across the White House lawn, got to the area where he was ready to make his speech, gets out there and says, I've got nothing else to say other than I made the right decision and I'm not going to leave it to another president to handle. And the bottom line is I did what was right. And he's saying that. He has the nerve to say that while people are being literally executed, like literally one by one, they're being executed because they supported the United States of America. Now, some people are telling me, well, Pastor James, I don't understand what you mean while people are being executed. What does that mean? Okay, there are several groups of people that are being executed by the Taliban right now, right? Number one, first and foremost, we're talking about Christians. Christians are their number one target. Christians are going after them. They are being executed by substantial numbers. That's happening. We know it's happening. We need to pray for the underground church in Afghanistan because we know it's a significant problem and these believers are getting killed, in many cases raped, tortured, all the other stuff. It is really, really bad what's going on, but that is exactly what's happening right now. And you can thank Joe Biden for that being the case. Let's talk about the other people group that are being killed. And this is perhaps another very sad and tragic picture of why it is the United States of America begins to develop a bad reputation. It isn't because of all the things that Joe Biden says it was. It isn't because of all the things that the critical race theorists say it is. It's because of actions that are adhered to by a man like the current president who wants to feed into the military industrial complex while being inspired by the woke industrial complex. So the other group of people that are dying, let's talk about them for just a second. When we went into Afghanistan, one of the major problems that we ran into is knowledge of the territory, right? Knowledge of the people, who the players were, and actually knowledge of virtually everything else that surrounded many of the regions in Afghanistan. You've got to understand that these districts were all different government boundaries that are being, all have different, let me just say this. Every single government boundary that you see in this picture right here, let me see here. Oh, the picture that you have in front of you. Sorry, I didn't realize I didn't take that off. Everyone that you see in this picture in front of you actually have different issues that relate to different tribal customs and different stories in every single place. That is the reality of what we are seeing and witnessing right now. Now, here's the problem. When you go into a place like Afghanistan and you have no intelligence, because that's really what it is. It's intelligence. You need information on the country that you are going into. You need to know how they fight. You need to know who the big shot callers are. You need to know what the conflicts are. You need to understand back and forth all the things that are happening. It's a very difficult process to be able to discern when you don't have a background in this. Now you can say, okay, well, U.S. military intelligence has got a pretty good job on understanding these issues. Actually, they don't. Because again, when it comes to this type of stuff, when we first went into Afghanistan, we didn't have a clue of what we were dealing with. By the way, we didn't learn our lessons from the Russians, because when the Russians did the same thing, it was a nightmare and it never worked out for them. Matter of fact, it worked out horribly for them, and we didn't learn our lesson from that. And unfortunately, what ends up happening is a situation that was far worse than anything Russia ever dealt with back in those days. Now, going back to this group of people that's dying, let me explain. We needed intelligence. So we had lots of people go into country that have the ability to be able to speak the language, spend some time developing relationships with different players in Afghanistan, people that were born and raised there, and begin to recognize them as whether or not they could be trusted by the United States military. And they began to develop a large group of people that would eventually become individuals on the United States of America's payroll. They would act as informants, in some cases translators, in other cases intelligence gatherers. Nonetheless, they had lots of people that were put on their payrolls. We paid for people to spy. We paid for people to give us secret information. We paid for people to infiltrate certain regions. We paid to gather anti-terrorism or counterterrorism information. Many of the counterterrorism deployments that went forth were based on the intelligence produced by some pretty remarkable individuals who put their life on the line on a regular basis to ask for information that the United States of America needed. By the way, thank you, Ophir. God bless you. They did all of that. But I want you to understand something incredibly important here. When Joe Biden did what he did, it created a bigger problem for the United States than anybody ever wants to think. Let me explain why. When we started employing these people that were in Afghanistan, you've got to understand this. When we started employing them, you've got to know that this employment was based on the trust of secrecy. It was based on the fact that eventually they would be found out as informants and employers or people who were being employed by the United States of America. This was something that they were fully aware of. They knew that this was coming. And so it was very important, very, very important, that the United States of America gave their word and stuck to their word concerning supporting these people if they were ever found out. For example, if I'm a man who's in part of this intelligence spindle, for lack of a better term, I'm an Afghan man and I decide that I'm going to help the United States of America, there was an understanding that if they found me out, that the US of A would find some way to protect me and my family, very likely getting me out of the country and putting me in a place where I could be safe, being relocated, potentially in the United States of America if I had to be. This was working for a long time. This is what was happening. Except in recent weeks, Joe Biden says, forget you. We're gone. We're pulling out all of our people. And then this is the problem. This is exactly what happened. Then the Taliban went to those that they knew had key information about informants and everything else, and literally took their families and threatened their lives and said, we will kill your daughters and your sons and your wives if you don't release to us this particular information. And guess what they did? They gave up that information. So now, undoubtedly, the Taliban has a list of every single person that was employed by the United States of America. And in the meantime, Joe Biden said, I made the right decision, and is now on his way back to his vacation place while hundreds and thousands of people stand to be murdered, to lose their lives. Folks, that's exactly what we're dealing with right now. That's exactly where we're going. That's how bad the situation in Afghanistan actually is. Michelle, thank you so much. God bless you. And yes, we are heaven bound. That's for sure. So next, what happens? So now here's the part that Joe Biden isn't thinking about. And maybe he isn't, just doesn't care. I actually think he's confused. Many people in his administration are actually saying that he's confused. He doesn't understand the full implications of his actions. Of course he doesn't. He's like the 5-year-old kid that you tell not to run across the street, and the kid doesn't anyway because he doesn't understand he could get ran over by a Peterbilt engine truck. That's Joe Biden, not understanding the real world consequences of his absolute cutthroat, demonic decisions. Now, what's even more interesting about all of this is as he goes back on his vacation so that he can sleep for 20 hours out of a 24-hour day or however it is that he sleeps. The worst part about all of this is that there is not a single person in another nation that's in a similar circumstance that will ever trust the United States of America again. You want to know why they won't trust the United States of America again? Because they will say, I don't want to be forsaken like those in Afghanistan were forsaken. That's exactly what we're seeing right now. You can say whatever you want about the former president of the United States. You could say whatever you want about Trump and his administration, but the one thing you cannot say is you cannot say he was a coward. You cannot say that people did not fear him. They absolutely feared him. He did whatever was necessary to make sure that the homeland was safe, and he did a really good job of it. And he had, in my opinion, what may have been the best Secretary of State the United States of America had ever had, who completely understood these issues as well. Unfortunately, what we continue to see is unmitigated evidence of the fact that this is a man who does not care about the welfare of our country. Now, let's get to the nitty-gritty of all of this, because the question that I ask is, because I just wanted to give you kind of a summary of what's going on politically and what's happening and everything that I'm talking about. By the way, even CNN is saying some of the stuff that I'm talking about, right? Yes, the Communist Nationalistic Network, even those guys are beginning to say some of the things that I'm actually saying right now, which is mind-boggling if you think about it. It's something like I've never seen, but that's the reality of what we're facing right now. And that's what we're going through. That's what we're seeing, right? But then here's the thing that's even more interesting. Now catch this, and I want you to get this, right? Because this becomes very, very unique and important to us when we start digging deeper into this and asking ourselves, what is the prophetic significance of all of this, right? I think it's a good question. Let's talk about what the prophetic significance is of all of this. And I just thought that maybe we would have a conversation and talk about that because there is a lot of prophetic significance to this. So I think it's kind of a good idea to maybe go over to a map. I think I'm going to probably put myself in the bottom right-hand corner of this map. Let's do this. I'll turn this on so you guys can see that. I am covering up Somalia. Okay, now I am going to move my picture up to the top right-hand corner so that you can locate Afghanistan. Okay, so once I move my picture on the top right, you'll actually see Afghanistan. That kind of helps you locate it. Okay, so here we go. All right, now back down at the bottom, you see that pink little country, Afghanistan. We say right away, what is the prophetic significance, if there is any? What is the prophetic significance of what's going on in Afghanistan? Okay, let's talk about what it used to be like without the crumbling of Afghanistan. When Afghanistan was pretty stable, then the borders of Afghanistan were stable. And if the borders of Afghanistan were actually stable, then you would not have anybody questionably go through that border to be able to accommodate or facilitate nefarious action. Now, what's very interesting about the border beginning to destabilize in Afghanistan, because it will, if not already, is that Iran will be affected. Now, how is Iran affected? Iran is affected several different ways. Perhaps the greatest way in which Iran is infected that's a good way of saying it. The way that Iran is affected is that it really begins to develop a larger power base based on what's actually happening. Now, by the way, that's also very true of China. Some people might not really understand why that's the case, but it is very true of China because, again, when the placeholder of Afghanistan becomes affected, then China itself is able to take advantage of the distraction that Afghanistan is creating in order to accomplish whatever nefarious purposes it chooses to accomplish. And when I say China, for the record, I'm talking about the Chinese Communist Party. Now, I'm not going to talk a lot about China because as I talk about China, I just want to say this. I want to say that they are inconsequential in Bible prophecy. I don't think Bible prophecy emphasizes what's happening in China a lot. I think basically China is something that is really not mentioned in Bible prophecy. And so I'm not going to spend a lot of time having a conversation about that because I kind of think it's a bit of a waste of time in having that conversation. Truth be told, there might be some value that comes out of it, especially with those that are sympathizers with the Chinese Communist Party cause, which could greatly affect all kinds of other things, right? There's so many other things that are going on there that we could talk about, but I just don't have the time to talk about how that could affect so many other things in the region. One thing I would say is be on the lookout for this. I'm almost certain that China is going to take a run at Hong Kong more aggressively. I think they're going to take a run at Taiwan more aggressively. I think there's going to be a lot of things that we're going to be looking at here that's going to manifest itself with respect to the totalitarian mindset of the Chinese Communist Party. And I would not be surprised if you see them seek to do other things with the tools that they have developed to put other economies on their knees. I think we'll see that. I don't think that it's going to be an uncommon thing. I think it's going to be something that's going to prove itself to be very, 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 very advantageous for China. But it's inconsequential to us because I think the globalists are going to look at China and they're not going to like China because China won't play nice with them, and they are going to start scapegoating all kinds of things on China. Perhaps the number one thing they're going to scapegoat on China is the current health crisis. I have to be careful how I use my words because I'm not on Rumble. I am actually right now on YouTube and Facebook. So just to keep you guys on and not be blocked out, to keep the audience, I'm not going to talk about some of the implications of that with respect to the health crisis that's going on, okay? Now, let's put that aside. Let's not talk about China right now, but let's talk about Iran. Now, in order for me to be able to effectively explain to you some of the implications of what's going to happen with Iran advantageously as a result of the mechanism of destruction going on right now, or implosion going on right now in Afghanistan, I have to give you an illustration, perhaps maybe from my childhood, because I think that would help. I remembered on many occasions as a child, I'm sorry, I'm drinking water like crazy. I remembered on many occasions as a child when I would go to my father and I would tell my father, hey, I'm hurting, I'm in pain. I got, something happened where I fell off my bike or something like that happened. And of course, my dad was, he was a red-blooded male man. The guy was tough. And my dad would tell me things like, you'll get over it. It's okay. This would be a funny one. I would fall on the floor and my dad would say, well, did you hurt the floor? Did you break the floor? That would be the question that my dad would ask. And it was my dad was the most loving dad that any son could ever ask for. Let me just tell you that from the very beginning. But it was one of those things that my dad did as somewhat of a distraction tactic, right? And then every now and then when I would complain about the pain that I had, oh, I'm still hurting, and I would cry for an extra few moments or whatever, my dad would say, well, I can take away the pain by punching you in the face if you like, or I could take away the pain by smashing your hand, then you won't feel the pain that you're feeling in your knee or something like that. And it was a joke. It's very hard to be able to translate it from Arabic to English. It wasn't like a threat like some of you are taking it to be right now. It was kind of a joke, kind of a running joke. But you got to understand something. There is a lot of truth to the imposition of such a statement. There's a lot of truth to that. Here's something that I learned very quickly when I developed perhaps one of the most painful nerve diseases somebody can actually have. I hate it. It's the very reason, by the way, many of you see me squinting, right? And I'll take us off the map for just 1 second. When I do squint, it's a reflection of the fact that my nerves are creating a lot of pain that are too much for my body to be able to sort of handle. So I end up kind of doing that. It's almost an automatic reflex, right? It's just something that's just a part of me now. That's kind of the way it works. And it's unfortunate, but that's just the reality of my condition. So the doctors, when I was first diagnosed with this, made it very, very clear that they thought it was moral, okay, good for me to consume pain pills. And when I say pain pills, I mean like pain pills. You know what I'm talking about? Like the kind of stuff that causes you to be a bit loony, if you know what I mean. Narcotics. And of course, I always refused. And the reason why I always refused to take them was because I wanted to be able to have my faculties. I want to be able to appropriately articulate thoughts and ideas. I want to be able to do live shows like this. I want to be able to take care of myself and my mind and not lose my mind and be available to my family. So we had to look for other alternatives to keep me from completely losing my mind because of the pain that's in my body. So one of the most useful alternatives that we have developed is distracting one part of my body with pain so another part of my body won't experience that pain. And that pain would be very, very nominal, wouldn't be much, but because it's newly introduced to the body, the nervous system responds to what is happening there, thus ignoring everything else. So I'll give you an idea of how that works, right? You've got a highway, if it's got 6 lanes or 7 lanes. And you've got one car that just passes through there, no problem, because it's a big wide highway. And let's say you want to stop that car from going through that highway. The most effective way of stopping that car from going through that highway is tons of traffic, right? That car is not going to go fast through the highway if you load up that highway with a bunch of cars. Why? Because you can only put so many cars on that highway before it begins to clog up. Well, that's what happens with the nervous system. With the nervous system, what begins to happen is you begin to load it up with so many different pain signals that the pain signal that's being produced by the primary device that's really hurting you begins to go away because the brain can only process so many cars on the highway. It's a tactic that we use. That's why I wear gloves sometimes that are very tight on my hands, because that produces some kind of a neurological stimulation that clogs up the highways, the proverbial highways. That might be the reason why I have a massage gun on my hand, or that might be the very reason why sometimes I'll squeeze my own hands, because I'm seeking to produce a distraction that will keep the main thing from being able to be noticed. That, my friends, ladies and gentlemen, will be the primary advantage to a nation like Iran. That will be even more of an advantage to a nation like Russia. Because while everybody is being distracted by the destructive mechanisms being deployed through the function of the Taliban. Nobody is going to be paying attention to what China's doing in Hong Kong or Taiwan. They're not going to be paying attention to the enrichment of uranium in Iran. They are most definitely not going to be paying attention to a Russian leader, aka Gog, seeking to develop himself as the one person who has complete control over the region because he is the self-appointed peacemaker. All that is happening, by the way, under the nose of all of us that are being distracted by the evil actions of our current president. By the way, I want to be respectful to everybody. I did not bring up my physical condition so that you guys can start giving me all kinds of helpful things. God bless you for doing it. I promise you I've gone through every helpful tool available to me, and this is just simply the thorn in the flesh that God has allowed me to have to be able to experience what I'm experiencing. So God bless you guys. You guys are amazing giving me all this kind of advice, but I can promise you I've done all of it, okay? It's all by the grace of God, and we're just simply going to go with the flow and do what God has called us to do and not be worried about anything else. So I just want you guys to know that. Please don't be bothered by that. Don't let that affect you. This is just simply the thing that God has put in front of us now at the moment, and that's okay. We're going to live with it. It's not going to be the end of the world, you guys. I promise you that, okay? I'm just bringing this up so that I can help with the illustration. So as I said before, the distraction tactics that are being used right now, and this is very, very important to understand, the distraction tactics that are being used in Afghanistan are giving Iran a total advantage. We've talked about this. They're giving Putin, I think, even a bigger advantage. Because you know what Putin is doing, you guys? Putin is now beginning to go out of his way to say, look, I know none of you want to be in the Middle East. The United States has withdrawn from Afghanistan. That's not really the Middle East, but they've walked away from Afghanistan. The United States really doesn't want to have their hands in Middle Eastern affairs. Yes, they want to have their hands in fighting for the Palestinians. That's a whole other situation. That's also very misdirected and misguided. They are, I don't even want to go there. It's just really awful. But it's so interesting to me how the United States of America has really become the friend of terrorists all over the world. And by the way, they've become the friend of terrorists all over the world who want to kill them objectively first. So Putin says, I know the USA doesn't want to get involved in these places. They're the people that used to get involved in the first place. But they don't want to get involved anymore. They've all withdrawn themselves. The United States has no desire to insert themselves in Mideast policy. That is the statement that Joe Biden is in essence making. So what's happening? Well, we know what's happening. At that point, the next place we go to is Gog, the leader of Russia. He says, I want to get involved. Don't worry. I'll be the peacemaker. He's going to the United States of America and he says, let me be the person who helps you here. Let me be the person that takes care of Iran. Let me be the person who acts as a proxy in Syria. Let me be the person that deals with Israel. We have a pretty good relationship with Israel. Let me be the person that takes care of all of it. By the way, one of the things you might want to understand and know is that one of the greatest contributory factors of the prominence of the United States of America as it relates to foreign policy has always been their open and blatant support of Israel, especially within the last 70 years. That has always been the case. It's never been different. It's always been the case. What perhaps is more incredible than that is the Bible makes it very clear the things that will be happening in the last days. And one of the things we gather from the Bible is what the Bible doesn't mention. And folks, the Bible doesn't mention the United States of America. And I believe that the United States of America is going to continue to grow more rapidly insignificant as it relates to matters of foreign policy, particularly within the 1040 window. The Middle East, it will continue to grow that way, insignificant, as they withdraw themselves. And lo and behold, now we have a reason. Now we have a reason why the United States of America dwindles away. Their lack of support for Israel. By the way, can I just insert a little side comment here? I still hope in my heart that the reason why the United States of America is inconsequential in Bible prophecy is because so many people come to know the Lord that when the rapture takes place, we'll all be gone. That's my hope and my prayer, but I don't think that's going to be the case, to be honest with you. I think it's going to get way worse. I think it's going to get far worse. But that's the situation that we're looking at. So here we go. We have Gog beginning to rise in prominence. I'm not saying that Putin is Gog, but the position of Putin is actually Gog in the Bible. Although this is a very interesting note, Putin is the richest man in the world. He is by far one of the most powerful men in the world. He's a lot more powerful than a lot of people think. He's cunning. He's very, very crafty. He's smart as could be. He does virtually everything that you can think of. The guy's a fighter jet pilot. He's a guy who's very familiar with intelligence. All of this type of thing. The guy's brilliant. He would make a perfect Gog. I don't know if it's going to be him or if there's going to be somebody else that takes his place. I think he would be a very perfect leader, or the perfect leader that the Bible talks about that will actually lead Russia into doing what they're doing. By the way, Putin had a very, very smart way of developing a relationship with Bibi Netanyahu. Now we know that it's gone. Now we've got Naftali. But what's very important with Bennett is the fact that Putin is beginning to foster a relationship with him. By the way, using some of the techniques that he learned in the KGB. Not, obviously, we know Bennett wasn't in the KGB. I'm talking about, I keep saying the KGB, the KGB. I'm telling you, the guy's brilliant. Now, here's what we know in Ezekiel chapter 38. We know, by the way, Chris Green, thank you so much. God bless you. We know, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that what happens, according to Ezekiel chapter 38, is the prerequisite. Now, let's talk about the prerequisite. What has to happen, first of all? What kind of a condition do we have to see before we see Ezekiel 38 take place? A lot of people say no condition. That's not true. Right now, Ezekiel 38 could not take place, even if someone just snapped their fingers and said, let's do it, unless it was God, and that'd be a whole different story, but he doesn't contradict his word. So I would say there's no way Ezekiel chapter 38 can take place. Why? Well, first of all, I think we have to get raptured, but I'm not going to make that my primary reason for why Ezekiel 38 can't take place. The reason why Ezekiel 38 can't take place is all founded in one very simple area. And that is the fact that Ezekiel chapter 38 tells us that Ezekiel chapter 38 tells us that Israel, sleep deprivation. That's what that is. Israel will not be in a position of strife with the neighbors that attack them. They will not be in that place. Let me read to you Ezekiel chapter 38. I think it's important. I think it's relevant for you guys to hear this. I'm going to read to you a portion of Ezekiel chapter 38 that talks about the prerequisite for this attack to take place. And I say it's a prerequisite because the assumption is that everything is already doing well. It's normal, okay? Let's go to Ezekiel chapter 38. And in verse 10, it says, "Thus saith the Lord God, it shall also come to pass that at the same time shall things come into thy mind." This is Gog leading Magog and the rest of the nations. "And thou shalt think an evil thought. And thou shalt say, I will go into the land," this is Israel we're talking about, "I will go into the land of unwalled villages, and will go to them that are," notice this, "at rest, that dwell safely, all of them dwelling without walls, and having neither bars nor gates, to take the spoil and the prey, etc., etc., etc." Let me read a description again. Unwalled villages, a land of unwalled villages, right? People at rest, people that dwell safely, dwelling without walls, and having neither bars nor gates. Sound like Israel to you today? No. No way. Sounds nothing like Israel today, right? Sounds nothing like Israel today. So what that tells us is that Israel has a way to go until that kind of security is actually deployed, right? They're not at rest right now. There are no unwalled villages. We're not seeing that. It looked like they were going in that direction earlier. Normalization agreements, some of the other things that are going on, but we're not seeing that right now. Especially when you consider the fact that Iran still stands as the greatest threat to Israel's existence. Israel won't admit it, but biblically speaking, so does Russia and Libya. And many of the other issues, which, by the way, there's a significant thing going on in Libya right now that Russia is going to take advantage of because of Afghanistan. I actually think because of Afghanistan, Russia is going to take advantage of the situation in Libya. There's literally a civil war being fought in Libya right now between two factions. One of those two factions are being sponsored directly by Russia. And don't be surprised if Russia gets real aggressive, real quick in Libya so that they can take complete control over there to the south. I would not be surprised if that was the case. I'm telling you, they need a border, southwest, right there in the Mediterranean. It would be the perfect ideal for them to be able to set up a port just north of Libya where the Mediterranean is. I promise you that would be something that would be greatly advantageous to Russia, and that's why they're working so hard to be able to take control. It's just some amazing stuff we're looking at here, folks. So for those of you that would say that Afghanistan might not be all that prophetically significant, I bet you it is, because I guarantee you what's going to happen here is that Russia is going to become the big player in the Middle East. Biden just told us today in the press release. I wish I could play it for you. Biden told us in the press release today that he had no interest in going back on his decision, that he's sticking with it even though thousands of people are going to die. Even though the strength of the United States of America has now been put at great risk. Even though the military prowess of the United States of America has been put at risk, and even though the big stick that the United States of America developed and began to hold with the existence of President 45 is now gone. President Biden has broken that stick into pieces. So guess what? Iran develops uranium, enriches uranium at a weapons grade percentage. They'll get there faster than you can imagine, and I'd be willing to bet that that's when Russia starts making deals with Iran, as into the carrying forces for those nuclear weapons that they're producing, and they begin to walk in alignment together as they are doing right now. I promise you that the very second Iran has nuclear capability, real weapons-grade nuclear capability, Russia's going to jump on the bandwagon of starting to do arms deals with them. Why? Because their justification for doing it will be, well, they've already got it, so there's nothing we can do, so we're going to the table to at least make what they do safe. I guarantee you that's what Russia's going to do. I'd be shocked if that's not where it went. I'm watching it happen. I'm watching it. So, what happens next? Where do we go next? What takes place? I'll tell you what takes place. We begin to see more and more things begin to be put into motion for the coming of the Lord. Not to be conflated with the second coming. The second coming is something that happens after the rapture. I'm talking about after the tribulation. I'm talking about the rapture. I think we are getting closer and closer and closer and closer to the rapture of the church. I think that what we're seeing in Afghanistan is opening up the door to hit the fast forward button on many of the things that I thought were going to take a long time to get to, especially as it relates to the position of Russia and what they are doing in their into their contribution to the stabilization of the region. Guys, I'm telling you right now, this is the fast forward button we've been looking for. I think Afghanistan is going to make a significant difference in how far Iran begins to move with respect to the things that they're doing. And by the way, don't think for a second all the other things that are going on, and I'm telling you, all the other things that are going on are not going to contribute to it. Here's some things that people might not be paying attention to. One of the things you should probably be paying attention to is the fact that when you look to the north of Israel, you find yourself in Lebanon. Beirut is in a crisis. They are making very open and vocal representations of the fact that economically speaking, they are weaker than they've ever been before. Many of the sanctioning processes that have happened to them directly and indirectly have created a problem. You've got Erdogan, who is absolutely losing his mind. I'll bring this map to you right now. He's losing his mind to the north. To the south. He's not even really digging through the Black Sea. He's poking holes all throughout the Mediterranean, saying that he's becoming energy independent, but he's not. He wants to resurrect the Ottoman Empire. So things are going crazy there. Iraq is saying, I want to be the peacemaker. That's Babylon, folks. That's the Babylon of Revelation chapter 13. Or the book of Revelation. Sorry, I wanted to say 13. That's not 13. And then, when you look at what's happening with Lebanon, Lebanon also becomes an open space for people to take control. And the people that are going to take the most control of that region in Lebanon, I'm going to tell you that right now, is a group called Hezbollah. And in case you don't know, Hezbollah is the best organized terrorist organization in the world. And quite frankly, they are the best friends of Iran. They are proxies of Iran. Why? Hezbollah are Shiites, just like Iran is. Although it's very ironic to understand this, Hamas, they're Sunni, but yet they are lining up with Shiite causes, aka Iran. They're proxies of Iran. By the way, if you look at Riyadh and what they're doing over there in Saudi Arabia, they're beginning to focus more and more and more on normalization with Israel, and they are beginning to make allies in the region because they know that they can't rely upon the United States of America to defend them from the person that's right across the street in the Persian Gulf. They have no defense. Well, not the kind of defense that they want. And of course, the greatest problem that we have there is that yellow piece of land that you see below Saudi Arabia, which is Yemen. The Yemenis, by the way, just so that you understand, have many people in their country that are acting as proxies of Iran. And Iran will do everything that they can to destabilize the condition of Saudi Arabia. By the way, if that happens, you are going to continue to see the condition laid out for us in Ezekiel chapter 38, because ironically, Saudi Arabia is perhaps one of the greatest dissenters to what is happening in Ezekiel chapter 38. They don't get involved physically, but they dissent to it. And it makes perfect sense based on everything that we're actually seeing. This stuff is unbelievable, you guys. I don't even have the time to get into the consequential actions of the Sudan. Forget the Sahara that's just north of Mauritania and south of Morocco, the significance of all of that, especially as it relates to the normalization agreement that Morocco enters into with Israel and what happens there. Let me just say that Algeria acts as a bridge or a gateway to the conflict that's going on with Russia in its own land, in Libya. And don't be surprised if that section of the Mediterranean Sea becomes heavily occupied and guarded by the Russians. Egypt, of course, will never capitulate. They're going to always protect the Sinai region. And of course, they're going to protect that part, that portion of the Mediterranean, because Sharm el-Sheikh, which happens to be one of the number one money producers for people visiting that area all over the Middle East. Everybody goes to that area for vacation. Egypt has too many financial and economic interests to not protect that. But all of this stuff is happening and it's all unfolding at once. And folks, I'm telling you this. You got to listen to me. This is not some hustle. This is not me playing some game. I'm laying out the facts for you. I'm just telling you how it works. Jesus is coming soon. That's the bottom line. Don't forget it. Jesus is coming soon. Now, I hope and I pray you'll be able to send this to a lot of your friends and show them this video, because I think it's worthwhile having some analysis on what's going on in Afghanistan. There's a lot of things that we're not going to find out we're not going to see until the things over the next few days begins to manifest itself. But we are watching something historic, ladies and gentlemen. We are watching something that we have never seen before, and this is unbelievable. This stuff is the most incredible. Listen, you guys are going to be blown away as you watch this stuff begin to materialize, because it is nothing like anything we could have ever imagined. I would have never told you that God would have fast forwarded what was going on with Russia and Iran and maybe even Saudi Arabia through Afghanistan. I would have never told you that. I thought that was so crazy. I would have never told you that. By the way, the Big B man, thank you. God bless you. And you are right. God's word is so true, and he is showing us more and more by the day. Guys, that's all I got for you today. Share this with people. It has been great. Listen, tomorrow we are going to bring in some more analysis into this particular issue. I think we're going to talk a lot about it. We're going to get into it quite a bit. So I would recommend that you get ready when me and Tom get together. That is going to be a great show. We're going to spend a good amount of time talking about all this stuff because it's pretty significant stuff. And hopefully we'll be able to dig pretty deep as we get into it. All right. So that's all I got, folks. Let's close it up in prayer because it's been a full show. Hopefully it's been useful. Don't forget to go grab that Ted Cruz video that we released. It's a good one. It is all about how he saved the Union at 3:30 in the morning a few days ago. It's a great video. You're not going to want to miss it. Let's pray and ask the Lord to go before us as we wrap it up. Father in heaven, we just thank you, Lord, for this time. Thank you for this great show, Lord. We love you for your goodness and your faithfulness, Lord. You are good. You are literally the one who is in control and on the earth. Thank you for your faithfulness, Lord. You are good to us. You love us, and you know exactly what you're doing. And for that, we acknowledge you and we thank you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. By the way, one other thing, I do think it is important, something to note that we also have going on, which I think is hopefully very useful to you. If you have not done so, please go to our Rumble channel and subscribe. That's just rumble.com/James Kaddis. You can subscribe there. We will put videos up there that we don't put here. I think that's very important, as some other issues need to be discussed. We are going to bring those things up over there. Make sure you like and subscribe to our channel. If you've not already liked this show, please do it. It's really important. Share it with folks, and then understand I would like your prayers, as Don Stewart and I will be filming the next episode of Countdown to Eternity immediately after this show. Pray for wisdom, because that's going to make a whiz-bang show on Wednesday for you guys, okay? We love you guys. God bless you. Keep fighting the good fight. The Convergence, by the way, good to see you on the show today. We missed you this morning. I just thought I'd give you a hard time about that. Love you guys. God bless you. Keep it real. Keep seeking the Lord.